Jake Morrison stood in the big meeting room and looked around at all the strange faces staring back at him. There were 17 different kinds of aliens sitting at the long table. Some looked like giant insects. Others looked like walking trees. A few looked like rocks with eyes. All of them looked angry. The room was filled with the sound of machines translating their words into the common language that everyone in the galaxy could understand. Jake tried not to move too much. He knew that some of these aliens thought. Any quick movement meant danger. "The humans are dangerous," said one of the bug-like aliens. Her voice sounded like breaking glass. "They do not follow safety rules. Last week, one of their ships saved people from a broken mining station. They did not do any safety checks first." Jake looked over at Dr. Lisa Carter, who was the human representative to this group. She was sitting next to him and looked as uncomfortable as he felt. They both knew this meeting was going to happen. The other species had been complaining about humans for months. A huge lizard-like alien slammed his fist on the table. The sound made everyone jump. "Our people need 2 full days of safety training before they go near a dangerous star. The humans sent one small ship into a terrible storm with only 20 minutes of preparation." Jake remembered that mission. Captain Pete Williams had volunteered to go into the storm to fix a space net was about to explode. The other species had said it was too dangerous and wanted to wait for the storm to pass. But by then, everyone on the station would have been dead. "Maybe we should watch how the humans do things," said another alien. This one looked like it was made of light and mist. Its voice sounded like wind blowing through leaves. "There must be a reason they act this way." All the aliens started talking at once. Their translators were working so hard that smoke was coming out of some of them. Jake had never seen so many different kinds of beings in one place before. There were tall ones and short ones. Some had fur, some had scales, and some had skin that looked like metal. The Galactic Safety Commission had been created after a terrible accident many years ago. 3 whole planets had been destroyed because someone did not follow safety rules. Since then, every species in the galaxy had become very careful about everything they did. They made long lists of rules to follow. They had meetings before every mission. They checked and double-checked everything. Everyone except the humans. "We are not careless," Jake said when the room finally got quiet. "We just think about danger in a different way." One of the rock-like aliens made a sound like grinding stones. "Different how?" "You ignore safety rules. You take risks that kill people. You act without thinking." "That's not true," said Dr. Carter. She stood up and looked around the room. "We think about safety all the time. We just don't need to write it all down in a book." The bug-like alien who had spoken first started making clicking sounds. Jake's translator told him she was laughing, but it did not sound like any laugh he had ever heard. "You have no safety books? No rules? No training?" "We have training," Jake said. "We just start it when we're children." This made all the aliens very confused. They started talking to each other in their own languages. The translators were having trouble keeping up with all the different conversations. The lizard alien turned back to Jake. "Your children learn about space safety? About radiation and gravity and vacuum exposure?" "No," Jake said. "They learn about making decisions when things go wrong. They learn about taking care of themselves and other people. They learn that sometimes you have to act fast." The light alien floated closer to the table. "This is very strange. Our children are protected from all danger until they are adults. Then they learn the safety rules." "And what happens when they face something that's not in the rules?" asked Dr. Carter. The room got very quiet. Jake could see that the aliens were thinking about this question. Their safety rules were very detailed and covered almost everything. But almost everything was not the same as everything. "We add more rules," said the rock alien finally. "And what do you do while you're writing the new rules?" Jake asked. The aliens looked at each other. They did not have a good answer to this question. "We wait," said the bug alien. "We study the problem. We make sure the new rules are safe." "And if people are in danger while you're waiting?" Dr. Carter asked. "That is unfortunate," said the light alien. "But it is better than making mistakes." Jake thought about all the people who had been saved by humans who did not wait for permission or new rules. He thought about the miners who were alive because Captain Williams had flown into a storm. He thought about the families who had been reunited because human rescue ships had ignored safety warnings. "Maybe," he said carefully, "we should work together. You could watch how we do things. We could learn from your safety rules. Maybe we could find a better way." The aliens talked among themselves for a long time. Jake could not understand what they were saying, but he could tell they were arguing. Some of them seemed interested in his idea. Others seemed afraid. Finally, the light alien spoke for the group. "We will send observers to watch human operations. We will learn how you make decisions without proper safety protocols. If your methods are truly safe, we will consider changing our own procedures." Jake smiled. "And if our methods are not safe? Then we will add new rules to prevent other species from copying you," said the lizard-alien as the meeting ended. Jake wondered what the observers would think when they saw humans at work. He hoped they would understand that humans were not reckless or careless. They were just different. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of things that could kill you in ways you never expected. Most species dealt with this by trying to predict every possible danger and make rules to avoid it. Humans dealt with it by learning to adapt when the unexpected happened. Soon, the aliens would see which approach worked better when lives were on the line. 3 weeks after the big meeting, a ship full of alien observers arrived at the human research station called Deep Water. The station was built near a huge gas planet that shot out dangerous radiation all the time. Most species thought this was too dangerous to study up close. The humans had been there for 2 years. Captain Amy Foster met the visitors at the docking bay. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and a friendly smile. She wore a simple blue uniform and acted like having alien visitors was the most normal thing in the world. "Welcome to Deep Water," she said as the observers stepped off their ship. "I hope you had a good trip. The coffee is fresh, and we have a great view of the next radiation storm from the main deck." The bug-like alien named Crystal Singer Veltar made a sound like breaking glass. Her translator said she was gasping in shock. "You watch the radiation storms for fun? Best light show in the galaxy," said Danny Roberts, the chief engineer. He was a short man with grease on his hands and a big grin on his face. "Plus, we can tell when the big ones are coming about 6 minutes before they hit. That gives us time to protect the equipment." The lizard alien observer was named General Scarmoth. He was even bigger than the one at the meeting and had scars on his scales that showed he had been in battles. He looked at the human safety manual with growing confusion. "Your emergency procedures say, look at the problem quickly, act fast, change plans as needed," he said. "Our emergency procedures have 847 specific steps." Dr. Helen Brooks was the station's head scientist. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She laughed when she heard this. 847 steps? By the time you finished reading them, the emergency would be over. We teach our people to think, not to memorize. The third observer was made of light and mist like the one at the meeting. This one called itself Whisper on Wind. It floated around the station, trying to understand how humans lived so close to danger. For the next week, the observers watched everything the humans did. They saw technician Roy Campbell crawl through a broken pipe while radiation poured through the station. Other species would have evacuated everyone before trying to fix the problem. Roy just put on a protection suit and went to work. They watched botanist Emma Watson continue her plant experiments while the station shook from gravity waves. The observers expected her to run away or at least stop working. Instead, she calmly moved her plants to a safer table and kept taking notes. The observers started to notice something strange. The humans were not ignoring safety. They were thinking about it all the time. But they thought about it differently than other species. When Danny Roberts worked on a dangerous machine, he did not follow a long list of rules. Instead, he looked at the machine, thought about what could go wrong, and made decisions based on what he saw. When Dr. Brooks planned an experiment, she did not check 847 safety procedures. She thought about the risks and found ways to reduce them. "How do you know what to do?" asked Crystal Singer Veltar. "Without rules, how do you know the safe way?" "We learn by doing," said Captain Foster. "Every human child learns to judge danger by facing small dangers. We fall off bicycles and learn about balance. We touch hot stoves and learn about heat. We make mistakes and learn from them." This idea shocked the observers. In their cultures, children were protected from all danger until they became adults. Then they were given long lists of rules to follow. The idea of letting children face danger on purpose seemed crazy. "But children could get hurt," said General Scarmuff. "They could die." "Sometimes they do," admitted Dr. Brooks sadly. "But most of them learn to be careful without needing rules. And when they grow up, they can handle new dangers that no one has written rules for yet." The observers were still trying to understand this when the real test came. It started with a call for help from a small research ship that was in trouble near the gas planet. The ship was called the Pioneer. It had 2 people on board, pilot Steve Martinez and scientist Dr. Kelly Adams. They had been studying the planet's atmosphere when their power failed. Now they were falling toward the planet, and the pressure would crush their ship in less than 2 hours. The observers watched as the humans responded to this emergency. There was no committee meeting. No one checked the safety manual. Captain Foster looked at the situation for about 30 seconds, then started giving orders. "Danny, get the Ranger ready to launch. Take out everything we don't need. We need to be fast." "Amy, the radiation levels are very high right now," said Dr. Rachel Murphy, the station's doctor. "The safety rules say we should wait for the storm to pass." "The safety rules don't account for 2 people dying while we wait," Foster said. "What? Do you need to keep us alive long enough to reach them?" Crystal Singer Veltar tried to stop them. "Surely you must talk to your commanders first. Run computer tests? Make a detailed rescue plan?" Captain Foster looked at her with genuine confusion. "People are dying right now. We know how to save them. What else do we need to talk about?" The observers could not believe what they were seeing. The humans were about to fly into a deadly radiation storm to save 2 people. They had no detailed plan. They had not asked permission from anyone. They were just going to do it. The rescue ship Ranger launched 18 minutes after the distress call came in. The observers watched from the station as the small ship dove toward the gas planet. They expected it to be destroyed by the radiation. Instead, they saw something amazing. The human crew was making decisions faster than any computer could calculate. Engineer Tony Clark was rerouting power as the radiation damaged their systems. Navigator Beth Collins was plotting a course through the storm using her experience instead of computer maps. Captain Foster was flying the ship like it was part of her own body. They reached the Pioneer with only 17 minutes to spare. The observers watched as the Ranger grabbed the smaller ship and pulled it away from the planet. Both ships made it back to the station safely. As the rescued crew was brought aboard, the observers realized something important. The humans had not been reckless. They had been incredibly skilled. Every decision they made was based on years of training and experience. They did not need rules because they had learned to think. How did you know it would work? Asked Whisper on Wind. We didn't, said Captain Foster honestly. But we knew that doing nothing would definitely fail, so we did something. The observers looked at each other. They had come to judge the humans for being unsafe. Instead, they had learned something that would change how they thought about safety forever. The humans were not ignoring safety. They were the safest species in the galaxy. They just measured safety differently than everyone else. The emergency alarm started screaming at 14:32 station time. Captain Amy Foster was drinking coffee in her office when the sound made her jump up and run to the command center. The 3 alien observers followed her, curious to see how humans handled a real crisis. What's the situation? Foster asked as she reached the main control panel. The research shuttle Pioneer is in trouble, reported Communications Officer Linda Hayes. They lost main power during a routine survey mission. The ship is drifting toward the gas planet. Foster looked at the main screen, which showed the Pioneer as a small dot slowly falling toward the huge, swirling planet below. The numbers on the side of the screen were changing fast, showing that the shuttle was picking up speed as the planets. Gravity pulled it in. How long do they have? Foster asked. Computer says about 2 hours before the pressure crushes the hull, said Navigation Officer Carl Peterson. Maybe less if they hit one of the deeper atmospheric layers. Foster nodded and started making decisions. The alien observers watched, expecting her to call a meeting or consult the safety manual. Instead, she just looked at the problem and began solving it. Danny, prep the Ranger for immediate launch, she called to the chief engineer. Strip out everything we don't need. All the science equipment, extra supplies, anything that adds weight. We need speed and the ability to move quickly. Danny. Roberts was already moving toward the hangar. How much radiation shielding do you want me to take out? None, Foster said firmly. We'll need every bit of protection we can get. Dr. Rachel Murphy, the station's medical officer, looked worried. Amy, the radiation levels near the storm belt are off the charts right now. Standard safety protocols say we should wait for the storm to pass. How long will that take? Foster asked. 6 to 8 hours, Murphy replied. The Pioneer crew will be dead in 2 hours, Foster said. Standard. Safety protocols don't account for people dying while we wait for perfect conditions. General Scarmuth, the lizard alien observer, stepped forward. Surely you must contact your superiors first? Get permission for such a dangerous mission? Foster looked at him like he had said something strange. Permission to save lives? From who? The people who were about to die. Crystal Singer Veltar made her glass-breaking sound again. But you need to run computer simulations first. Calculate the risks. Develop a comprehensive rescue plan with backup procedures. The simulation is simple, Foster said. If we go now, we might save them. If we wait, they die for sure. What other calculation do we need? The alien observers exchanged glances. They had never seen anyone make such important decisions so quickly. In their cultures, a rescue mission like this would require days of planning, committee meetings, and approval from multiple levels of command. The humans were preparing to launch in less than 20 minutes. Foster walked quickly to the hangar, talking into her communication device. As she went, Tony, I need you on the Ranger as engineer. Beth, your navigation. We launch in 15 minutes. What about the radiation? Asked Tony Clark as he climbed into the rescue ship. The storm is getting worse. That's why we have shielding, Foster said. And that's why we're going now, instead of waiting for it to get even worse. The Ranger was a small, fast ship designed for quick trips around the local system. It was not built for flying through radiation storms or diving into planetary atmospheres. But it was what they had, and 2 people were going to die if they did not use it. The alien observers watched from the station's control room as the Ranger launched. They expected the humans to be afraid or nervous. Instead, the crew seemed calm and focused. They were not ignoring the danger. They were managing it. "Ranger to deep water," came Captain Foster's voice over the radio. "We're approaching the storm. ELT, radiation levels are climbing." "Copy that, Ranger," replied Linda Hayes from the communications station. "We show you entering the yellow zone." The observers watched the radiation readings climb higher and higher. Any ship from their species would have turned back long ago. The Ranger kept going. "Power fluctuations starting," reported Tony Clark from the Ranger. "The radiation is affecting our systems." "Can you compensate?" Foster asked. "I'm rerouting power through the backup systems," Tony said. "It's like trying to fix a machine while someone is hitting it with a hammer, but I can keep us running." Navigator Beth Collins was working just as hard. "The storm is changing the magnetic fields. My instruments are going crazy. I'm flying by. Feel now." To the alien observers, this sounded like chaos. How could anyone navigate by feel through a radiation storm? But they could see on their screens that the Ranger was still on course toward the Pioneer. "Ranger, you're entering the red zone," warned Linda Hayes. "Radiation levels are approaching critical." "Understood," Foster replied. "We have visual contact with the Pioneer." On the main screen, the observers could see the 2 ships. The Pioneer looked dead in space, tumbling slowly as it fell toward the gas planet. The Ranger was moving toward it, fighting against the radiation and the planet's gravity. "Pioneer, this is the Ranger," Foster called on the radio. "Steve Kelly. Can you hear me?" A weak voice came through the static. "Ranger, this is Steve Martinez. We can hear you. Our power is completely dead. We can't maneuver." "Don't worry about maneuvering," Foster said. "We're going to grab you and pull you out. Just hang tight." The observers watched as the Ranger moved closer to the Pioneer. The radiation was so intense that both ships were barely visible through the interference. The human crew was working by instruments that were failing and instincts that no alien species understood. "Got them," announced Beth Collins. "Magnetic grapples are locked on." "Tony, can our engines pull both ships out of the gravity well?" Foster asked. "I don't know," Tony admitted. "The radiation has damaged some of our power systems. We're running at about 60% efficiency." "Then we use everything we have," Foster said. "Full power to engines." The observers held their breath as the Ranger tried to pull the Pioneer away from the planet. The radiation was getting worse, and both ships were taking damage. If the Ranger's engines failed, all 4 humans would die. Slowly, very slowly, 2 ships began to move away from the gas planet. The Ranger was straining against the gravity, using every bit of power it had. Sparks flew from damaged systems. Warning lights flashed all over the control panels. "Come on," Foster whispered, as if she was talking to the ship itself. "Come on, you can do this." The observers realized they were holding their breath. They had never seen anyone try something so dangerous with so little preparation. But somehow, it was working. "We're clear of the gravity well," Beth announced. Setting course for deep water, the observers watched as both ships limped back to the station. The Ranger was badly damaged, and the Pioneer was completely dead. But all 4 humans were alive. As the ships docked, General Scarmouth turned to his fellow observers. They had no plan, no safety procedures, no approval from superiors. They just did it. "And it worked," added Crystal Singer Veltar quietly. Whisper on Wind floated near the window, watching the human crew help the rescued scientists out of their damaged ship. They risked 4 lives to save 2. By our calculations, That is not logical. Maybe, said Dr. Murphy, who had been listening to their conversation. Your calculations are missing something. The observers looked at her curiously. You calculate risk, she said. We calculate loss. There's a difference. The day after the rescue, the 3 alien observers sat in the station's meeting room with several human crew members. The observers had been taking notes and recording everything they saw, but they were still confused about what had happened. Doctor. Lisa Carter had arrived on a transport ship to join the discussion. She was curious about what the aliens had learned from watching humans work. The meeting room was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the station's air recycling system. So, Dr. Carter said, settling into her chair, what did you learn about human safety procedures? Crystal Singer Veltar spoke first. Her translator made her voice sound uncertain, which was unusual for her species. You have no safety procedures. You just act without thinking about the rules. That's not exactly right, Dr. Carter replied. We have safety procedures. They're just not written down in books. They're inside our heads. General Scarmouth leaned forward on his powerful arms. Explain this. How can you have procedures that are not written down? Every human learns about danger from the time they can walk, Dr. Carter began. We don't protect our children from all risk. We let them face small dangers so they learn to handle big ones later. The 3 observers looked at each other. This was completely different from how their own species raised children. Your young ones face danger on purpose? Asked Whisper on Wind, its misty form shimmering with confusion. Controlled danger, corrected Dr. Carl Lewis, the station psychologist. He was a thin man with a gentle voice who studied how people's minds worked. We call it learning by doing. A human child who never falls off a bicycle never learns. How to balance. A human who never faces the unknown never learns how to make good decisions. Captain Foster joined the conversation. When I was 5 years old, I climbed a tree in my backyard. I fell out and broke my arm. My parents didn't cut down the tree. They taught me how to climb better. But surely this leads to unnecessary deaths, protested General Scarmouth. Young ones die from these dangers. Sometimes, admitted Captain Foster sadly. But it also creates adults who can function when things go wrong. When we encounter something new and dangerous, we don't freeze up waiting for someone to tell us what to do. We adapt. The observers were starting to understand, but it was hard for them to accept. Their entire civilization was built on the idea. That safety came from following rules and avoiding all unnecessary risks. Let me give you an example, said Dr. Carter. When your species encounters a new type of radiation, what do? We study it, said Crystal Singer Veltar. We run tests. We create safety protocols. We train our people to follow the new procedures. How long does that take? Asked Dr. Carter. Months, sometimes years, admitted General Scarmouth. We must be thorough. And what happens to people who encounter that radiation while you're writing? The new rules? The observers were quiet for a long moment. They knew the answer, but they didn't want to say it. They die, said Whisper on Wind finally. Or they are injured because we have no procedures to help them. Now let me tell you what humans do, Dr. Carter continued. When we encounter new radiation, we use what we already know about similar radiation. We make educated guesses. We take calculated risks. We try things and see what works. But what if you're wrong? Asked Crystal Singer Veltar. What if your guesses are incorrect? Then we learn from our mistakes and try something else, said Captain Foster. The important thing is that we don't wait for perfect knowledge before we act. Dr. Lewis pulled out a small device and showed it to the observers. This is a recording of human children playing in a park on Earth. Watch what they do. The device showed a group of young humans running around, climbing on equipment, and playing games. The observers watched in horror as the children took what seemed like enormous risks. They swung from high bars, jumped from platforms, and ran at full speed without looking where they were going. "They could be hurt," said General Scarmoth. "Why don't the adults stop them?" "Because falling teaches them about gravity," Dr. Lewis explained. "Crashing into things teaches them about momentum. Getting lost teaches them about navigation. Each small injury is a lesson that might save their life someday." The observers watched as one child fell from a climbing structure and started crying. Instead of running to help immediately, the adults waited to see if the child could handle the situation. After a few moments, the child got up, brushed off the dirt, and started climbing again. "The child learned something," said Dr. Carter. "Next time, they'll be more careful, but they won't stop climbing entirely." "This is why humans don't need long safety briefings," added Captain Foster. "We've been getting safety training our whole lives. Every scraped knee, every small accident, every time we had to figure out a problem on our own, it all adds up." The observers began to understand why the rescue mission had been so successful. The humans weren't ignoring safety. They were using a completely different approach to safety than any other species in the galaxy. "Your way creates people who can think during emergencies," said Whisper on Wind slowly. "Our way creates people who can only follow rules. Both approaches have value," said Dr. Carter diplomatically. "Your detailed knowledge of specific hazards is very useful. Our ability to adapt to new situations is also useful. Maybe we could combine them somehow." General Scarmoth was quiet for a long time, thinking about what he had heard. Finally, he spoke. "In my military, we have a saying, 'No plan survives contact with the enemy.' We spend months planning for battle, but when the fighting starts, everything changes. The commanders who win are the ones who can adapt quickly." "That's exactly right," said Captain Foster. "You can't plan for everything. Sometimes you have to trust your training and your instincts." "But how do you know when to trust your instincts?" asked Crystal Singer Veltar. "How do you know when to break the rules?" Dr. Lewis smiled. "That's the hardest part to explain. It comes from experience, from making mistakes and learning from them, from facing danger and surviving it. You can't teach it in a classroom or write it in a manual." The observers spent the rest of the day asking questions and trying to understand the human approach to safety. They learned that humans had plenty of rules and procedures, but they also had something else, the ability to know when to break those rules. As the meeting ended, the observers realized they had a big decision to make. They could report back to their governments that humans were dangerous and reckless, or they could report that humans had discovered a better way to handle the unknown dangers of space. "There's something I don't understand," said General Scarmoth as they prepared to leave. "If your method is so good, why do you have any safety rules at all?" Captain Foster laughed. "Because we're not stupid. Rules are useful for common situations, where we already know what works. But when something new happens, someone has to be able to think outside the rules." "And how do you decide who makes those decisions?" asked Crystal Singer Valtar. "We train everyone to make them," Dr. Carter replied. "That way, no matter what happens, someone will be able to respond appropriately." As the observers left the meeting, they knew their report would change everything. The galaxy had been playing it safe for centuries, but the humans had shown them that sometimes the safest thing to do was to take a calculated risk. The question now was whether the other species would be brave enough to change their ways. 6 months later, the Galactic Safety Commission met again in the same big room where everything had started. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. The alien representatives were talking quietly among themselves, and many of them kept looking at the human delegation with new respect. Jake Morrison sat at the human table with Dr. Lisa Carter, watching as the 3 observers prepared to give their report. He could see that the other species were nervous about what they were going to hear. Crystal-Singer Veltar stood up first. Her crystalline body caught the light from the room's windows, making rainbow patterns on the walls. "Honored delegates," she began, "we have completed our observation of human safety procedures. What we found has changed our understanding of safety itself." The room became very quiet. Everyone was listening carefully. "The human approach to danger is not recklessness," she continued. "It is a form of safety preparation that no other species has ever developed. They do not need detailed safety briefings because they have been preparing for danger their entire lives." A murmur went through the room. Many of the aliens looked confused or surprised. General Skarmoth stood up next. His scarred scales gleamed under the lights as he addressed the assembly. "Our detailed safety protocols may actually be making us less safe. When we encounter situations that are not covered by our procedures, we become helpless. Humans encounter such situations and adapt to them." The rock-like alien who had been at the first meeting made his grinding stone sound. "Are you saying we should abandon our safety procedures? That we should be careless like the humans?" "The humans are not careless," said Whisper on Wind, floating up from the observer's table. "They are the most careful species we have ever encountered. They just measure carefulness differently than we do." Jake Morrison smiled as he watched the debate begin. The three observers had clearly learned something important during their time at Deep Water Station. "Please explain," said the tall, tree-like alien from the Verdant Collective. "How can recklessness be carefulness?" Crystal-Singer Veltar activated a holographic display that showed videos from the space station. "Watch this human child," she said, pointing to a recording from Earth. "She is learning to ride a bicycle. She falls down many times. Each time, she gets up and tries again. By the time she is an adult, she can balance on 2 wheels without thinking about it." The display changed to show the rescue mission. "Now, watch this human adult. She is making split-second decisions in a radiation storm. She has no manual to tell her what to do, but she succeeds anyway. Why? Because she has been practicing decision-making her entire life." The aliens watched the videos carefully. They could see the connection between the falling child and the confident adult, but it was hard for them to accept. "But children die from these learning experiences," protested the bug-like representative from the chittering hives. "How can you accept such losses?" Dr. Carter stood up to answer. "We don't accept them easily. Every lost child is a tragedy. But we have learned that protecting children from all risk creates adults who cannot handle any risk. In the long run, more people die from unpreparedness than from childhood accidents." "Show them the comparison data," suggested Jake Morrison. Crystal-Singer Veltar changed the display to show statistics from across the galaxy. Human casualties from childhood accidents, 0.3%. Human casualties from space emergencies, 0.8%. Total, 1.1%. The numbers for other species appeared next to the human data. Corthic casualties from childhood accidents, 0.0%. Corthic casualties from space emergencies, 4.7%. Total, 4.7%. The room erupted in shocked conversation. The species that protected their children most carefully had the highest death rates in emergencies. "The pattern is consistent across all species," General Skarmoth announced. "The safer you try to make childhood, the more dangerous adulthood becomes." "But surely there must be a middle ground," said the ethereal representative from the Whisper. "Worlds, we cannot simply abandon all safety procedures." "No one is suggesting that," said Dr. Carter. "What we're suggesting is that we combine the best of both approaches. Use your excellent knowledge of specific hazards together with our ability to adapt to new situations." Jake Morrison stood up and walked to the center of the room. The question before us is not whether we should have safety procedures. The question is whether those procedures should teach people to follow rules or teach people to think. Can they do both? Asked the plant-like alien from the growing kingdoms. Yes, said Dr. Carter, but it requires a fundamental change in how we think about safety. Instead of trying to prevent all possible accidents, we need to teach people how to handle accidents when they happen. The debate continued for hours. Some species were interested in trying the human approach. Others were afraid of changing systems. That had worked for centuries. What you are suggesting is dangerous, said the crystal being from the Resonance Collective. Our safety procedures have prevented countless accidents. Why should we risk changing them? Because your safety procedures also prevent you from saving lives when something unexpected happens, replied Captain Amy Foster, who had traveled from Deepwater Station to attend the meeting. How many people have died while you waited for permission to act? The room became uncomfortable. Everyone knew the answer to that question, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Perhaps we could start with a small experiment, suggested the floating representative from the Cloud Dancers. One station, one ship, one team trained in the human method. That's exactly what we hoped you would say, said Jake Morrison. He activated his own holographic display. We propose a joint training program. Human instructors working with volunteers from other species. Not to replace your safety procedures, but to supplement them. The display showed a plan for a new kind of training center. It would be built on a neutral station where young beings from different species could learn together. They would practice making decisions under pressure. They would learn to think creatively about problems. They would develop the confidence to act when rules didn't provide answers. The children would still learn your safety procedures, Dr. Carter explained. But they would also learn when and how to break those procedures safely. General Skarmoth looked at the plan carefully. This training would create beings who could follow orders when appropriate and make independent decisions when necessary. Exactly, said Captain Foster. The best of both worlds. The crystal being was still skeptical. And what happens when these trained beings make mistakes? Who takes responsibility for the casualties? The same people who take responsibility now, Jake. Morrison replied. But there will be fewer casualties, because more beings will know how to respond to emergencies. The debate went on for several more hours. Representatives asked detailed questions about the training program. They wanted to know how it would work, who would oversee it, and how they could measure its success. Finally, the ancient representative from the First Builders called for a vote. The First Builders were the oldest species in the galaxy, and their opinion carried great weight. With the others, "We have heard the arguments," the First Builder said in a voice like grinding stone. "We have seen the evidence. The question now is simple. Do we continue doing what we have always done, or do we try something new?" One by one, the species cast their votes. Some voted yes immediately, convinced by what they had heard. Others took longer to decide, weighing the risks and benefits. When the votes were counted, the result was closer than Jake had hoped, but still decisive. The training program would go ahead. The joint training facility will be established at Harmony Point, announced the First Builder. Construction will begin immediately. The first class of students will arrive in 1 year. As the meeting ended, Jake found himself surrounded by alien representatives who wanted to know more about the program. They asked about curriculum, about teachers, about which of their young people should be selected for training. Remember, Dr. Carter told them, this is not about making your people more like humans. It's about giving them tools they don't currently have. They will still be themselves, just with better ability to handle the unexpected. Crystal Singer Valtar approached the human delegation as they prepared to leave. "I have one more question," she said. "How do you know this will work? How do you know that beings from other species can learn to think like humans? Captain Foster smiled. We don't know for certain, but that's the point. We're willing to try. Something new because the alternative is accepting that people will die while we wait for perfect solutions. And if the experiment fails? Asked General Scarmouth. Then we learn from our mistakes and try something else, Jake Morrison replied. That's what humans do. As the aliens left the meeting hall, many of them were talking excitedly about the new training program. Others were still worried about the changes it would bring. But all of them understood that something important had shifted in the galaxy. Dr. Carter walked to the large window that looked out into space. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species moved through the traffic lanes around the station. Each ship carried beings who had been trained to follow rules and avoid risks. Soon, some of those ships would carry beings who had been trained to think for themselves and take sea.